You already know what success is supposed to look like. It's the imported sedan in the office parking lot, the chronograph on a wrist during a meeting, the high-ceilinged apartment that silently announces you've arrived. For most of your life, you've been keeping score, measuring the distance between where you stand and where those symbols live. It's a natural instinct. Look at the horizon, calculate the gap, try to close it. But there are two completely different ways to cross that distance. The first way is loud. Every step is witnessed. Every dollar earned gets translated into something people can see and envy. The second way is quiet. Your progress is invisible to everyone around you, and it will cost you something too, just not the thing you're expecting. What you're actually choosing between isn't rich or poor, it's visible or free. Only one of those choices carries a price tag nobody warns you about. Your paycheck lands Friday afternoon. By Sunday night, a chunk of it is already gone. Not on anything glamorous, just groceries, gas, a utility bill that came in $20 higher than last month, the $55 you Venmo'd your roommate for shared Wi-Fi. You didn't splurge. You simply existed for 48 hours, and the balance drifted back toward zero. Here's the math. A mid-sized city professional earning $62,000 a year takes home roughly $48,500 after taxes, about $4,040 a month. Rent on a standard one-bedroom runs $1,750. That leaves $2,290. Subtract groceries, bull $450. Gas and car maintenance, bull $180. A car payment, bull $420. Insurance and health premiums, bull $300. Phone and internet, bull $190. And the subscriptions you forgot to cancel, bull $50. What's left over an entire year? Roughly $7,800. That's your entire margin of safety. One dead alternator, one surprise medical bill, one dead laptop, and it's gone. Two of those in the same season and you're on a credit card, paying interest just to stay upright. This is why more than half of working adults live paycheck to paycheck. Not recklessness, not a lack of discipline. Just math that was never built to work in your favor. The gap between what an entry to mid-level job pays and what it costs to simply remain upright, housing, transportation, healthcare, has widened for 2 decades while wages crept forward in inches. The real cost isn't on the spreadsheet. It's the calculation you run in the coffee aisle, choosing the cheaper bag out of habit. It's lying awake at 11 p.m. doing rent math in your head, running the same 3 numbers over and over even though they never change no matter how many times you check them. You tell yourself it's temporary. That once you get the next raise, or the promotion you've been angling for, the margin will finally open up and you'll breathe. Sometimes that's even true, for a month or two. Then the numbers around you quietly rearrange themselves to swallow the difference, and you're back to running the same math on a slightly higher income. You know this feeling, and when people finally look for a way out of it, they almost always run toward the wrong door. Eventually your work pays off. A promotion, a raise, 6%, nothing dramatic. Your next paycheck is $220 higher. For a month, it just sits there. Then lifestyle inflation does what it does. You start noticing everything you've been compromising on. Chad noticed first. You and Chad started at the company the same week, same starting salary, same cubicle row. When Chad got his bump, he didn't wait a month to decide what to do with it. He already knew. 3 weeks later, he pulled into the parking lot in a leased crossover, payment of $590 a month, and made a point of parking it where you'd see it walking in. Investment in the professional image, he told you, tapping the hood like it owed him something. A few months after that, Chad moved into a new development with stone countertops and a gym on the ground floor. $650 more a month than his old place. He started wearing the kind of blazer that has a story behind it if you ask, which he wanted you to. None of it looked reckless. That's what makes the loud ladder work. It never starts with excess. It starts with reasonable upgrades. A nicer apartment, a cleaner car, clothes that photograph well. Every step feels earned because it is a response to real effort. By 29, Chad's income has climbed to $83,000, and to anyone watching from the outside, he's the picture of a young professional who's figured it out. But you've seen his second monitor left open during lunch. His retirement contribution is still sitting at the default 3% nobody told him to change. His savings account holds $2,100 and hasn't moved in 6 months, because every time it starts to grow, something new claims it. His credit card carries a $3,200 balance he's been meaning to pay off next month since January. Chad's income went up. His lifestyle rose to meet it, dollar for dollar. His actual wealth? Zero. The ledger doesn't care that he earned the raise. A $590 car payment isn't $590. Over 4 years, it's more than $28,000 of post-tax income, and when the lease ends, he hands back the keys and owns nothing. But by then, his baseline has shifted. Driving something older would feel like admitting defeat, so he signs another lease, and the cycle resets. Chad isn't stupid. He's just been sold a very convincing story about what his money is supposed to say about him. And once your life is built around the appearance, walking it back feels like walking backward. You watch this happen to your friend in real time, and it makes you decide, quietly, that whatever you do with your next raise, it isn't going to be visible to anyone, not even Chad, especially not Chad. At 24, you're a junior data analyst earning $58,000. Take-home pay, about $3,600 a month. You split a 2-bedroom with a college friend to keep costs down. After rent, groceries, and student loans, you have about $350 left over each month. On a quiet Tuesday in November, you set up an automatic transfer, $250 a month, time to leave your checking account the day after each paycheck, into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. You don't tell anyone. No post, no announcement. The balance after the first transfer reads exactly $250. You close the app and go to sleep. Nothing about this feels significant. That's the point. Compounding doesn't need you to feel anything. It just needs you to not stop. At an average historical return near 10%, that $250 a month, held for 10 years, grows past $50,000. Your actual contributions, $30,000. The other $20,000 built itself while you were at work, asleep, or watching Chad park his crossover. At 27, your own promotion arrives. A $7,000 raise. The same kind of moment that sent Chad to the dealership. You keep your apartment exactly as it is and raise your transfer to $500 a month. Nobody at the office notices. Nobody offers congratulations. That's fine. You didn't do it for the congratulations. By 29, your account has quietly passed $65,000. Your old college car finally gives out. Instead of following Chad to the dealership, you pay cash for a 6-year-old Corolla with 68,000 miles. $11,500, no payment, no lease. In the parking lot, Chad glances at it and asks, not unkindly, if you're planning to get something newer soon. You just say it runs fine and walk inside. By 32, the math starts to shift in a way you can feel. Your portfolio's own growth in a single strong year begins to outpace what you're personally contributing. The machine you built is now doing more of the work than you are. At 35, you buy a modest townhouse for $215,000, putting 20% down from savings you kept entirely separate from your investments. The portfolio stays untouched. Around the office, someone, not Chad this time, someone newer, makes a joke about the Corolla still sitting in the lot after all these years. You sip your coffee and don't correct them. You don't mention that the account is quietly closing in on $350,000. You've noticed something by now. Every time you don't correct someone, a small distance opens between what they think is true about you and what actually is. It doesn't bother you yet. It just sits there, filed away. At 39, on an ordinary Sunday morning with a cup of coffee, you check the portfolio and it's crossed $1.2 million. No alarm goes off. It's just a number on a screen. But that number changes your legal status. You're now an accredited investor with access to private equity, real estate syndications, and funds closed to the general public. You built this from a paid-off Corolla and a habit nobody watched you keep. Eventually, you run the numbers on a quiet weekend and realize your passive income, dividends, interest, distributions, has surpassed your full-time salary. The machine now earns more than you do by working 40 hours a week. From the outside, your life still looks unremarkable. That was always the strategy. Invisibility was the fuel. The gap between what people assumed about you and what was actually true is exactly what let the machine grow without interference. But invisibility doesn't stay contained to your bank account. It follows you into every relationship you didn't fully let in on the secret. Your old friend Julian calls, voice tight. A dental emergency, $3,500, no insurance, his budget in free fall. You transfer the full amount before he finishes explaining, tell him not to worry about it. For you, it's a rounding error, a fraction of a single month's returns. For Julian, it's a debt that reshapes how he sees you. At lunch a month later, he insists on paying for a cheap diner meal, apologizes for the venue, makes the same joke about owing you twice in 20 minutes. The ease that defined 15 years of friendship has a new weight in it now. Your brother calls about refinancing his mortgage, a bank offering 7.2%, and he doesn't know whether to take it or wait. You have 16 years of financial literacy sitting behind your answer, and no way to hand him more than a soundbite in a 10-minute call. He thanks you, but you can hear the confusion still sitting in his voice after you hang up. This is the part the spreadsheets never show you. Stealth wealth works because of information asymmetry. You know your reality, and nobody else does. That asymmetry is a shield on the way up. It protects you from the parking lot, from Chad's crossover, from the pressure to keep pace with people who are spending money to look like they've already won. But the same asymmetry that protects you also isolates you. You think in terms of asset allocation and compounding timelines. The people who started the race beside you are still thinking about next week's rent. Both realities are true, they just don't translate. You can send money, you can try to explain. Neither one closes the gap, sometimes it widens it. There's no villain in any of this. Julian didn't do anything wrong by feeling the weight of the debt. Your brother didn't fail by not understanding refinancing math on a 10-minute call. You didn't do anything wrong by building the machine, or by helping when you could. It's simply what happens when one person's financial reality quietly outpaces everyone else's around them. The love stays intact, but the shared language starts to erode, one conversation at a time, until you notice you've started softening the truth just to keep things comfortable. Here's what nobody tells you when you set up that first automatic transfer. The math will work. If you actually leave it alone, it will compound exactly the way it's supposed to. That part isn't in question. What's in question is what you do with the distance it creates. So if you're starting where Sam started, here's the version of this that doesn't cost you the people around you. Automate the transfer before you see the money, not after. Keep your baseline lifestyle flat for at least the first 2 raises. Not forever, just long enough to build real margin. Buy the boring car in cash, and when someone you love hits a financial emergency, help them without turning it into a debt they carry in the friendship. Give it, don't lend it, and don't let the number define how they see themselves next to you. The wealth is real, the freedom is real. But freedom and connection were never the same asset, and no portfolio statement has a column for the second one. The Corolla is still in the driveway, the balance still climbs on its own, and the question that never shows up in any of the numbers is whether it was worth it to win alone.